guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another extra special reading vlog. At least I think so. And this video is sponsored by Cricut and I will be doing a really fun craft later on in this video. But let's go ahead and start chatting about the books because the TBR for this vlog I am truly so excited about. So my TBR is rather ambitious, I'm not gonna lie. Primary and first and foremost, I have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is a lyrical fantasy story about rivals to lovers, I want to say. The synopsis is rather vague, but they're both writers and journalists, and they live in a world where the gods kind of control everything, and I think there is some sort of conflict that they get involved with. From there, I also am going to be listening to, at the same time, The Dance Tree by Karen Millwood Hargrave. I have the audiobook for this. I meant to do this in the last reading vlog and completely failed, so I plan to carry it over. I also am going to be doing this puzzle while I listen to it. I think it's so cool. It's by one of my favorite artists. They turn her prints into puzzles, which I think is amazing. And then lastly, my hope is I finish this and then I will be able to start Age of Death by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the 5th book to the Legends of the First Empire series, which I stan, I love. I need to know what's going to happen next, and I figure I can at least hopefully start this and then I'll be able to finish it over the course of the weekend, perhaps. But this is my TBR. I think there's some really spectacular things on the agenda here, which is fantastic to see. But I have just personally wrapped up work for the day. I am making dinner tonight, making like a corn chowder, which feels very summery to me. I am essentially in pajamas. Like I'm just wearing this waffle shirt and these like boxer shorts. You know, no real clothes for me. In the meantime though, I think I'm gonna play some Zelda, hang out with Matilda, then make dinner, and then obviously get a good chunk of reading in today. That there is the plan. Look at Millie through the window. So cute. She is curled up so tight. Dinner is underway. I'm trying to not eat all this bacon, but I'm making a corn chowder. So this is pressurizing. Then I just blend it, add some milk, add some cheese. Bon appetit. This is the soup, and I'm just letting it thicken a bit, and then we will top it. All these delicious things. Just doing my thing. Also watching the challenge. He's also playing his Switch. This is what we do in our free time. Alrighty, I finally pulled myself away from the great gem hunt that is Tears of the Kingdom. And Millie and I are going to sit down. I'm going to start my first book, which is Divine Rivals. I just have a feeling I'm going to fly through this. I'm hoping it's romantic and beautiful. I already know I love Rebecca Ross's writing, so I'm just really looking forward to this. Good morning, friends. I am up and dressed because I am about to go meet my friend at a coffee shop this morning. I'm gonna read, get some work done. She is studying, she is getting her NP degree. So we're just having a little coffee shop hang in the AM. So that's why I'm like partially dressed. I do even have a little bit of makeup on. Gonna take a hot girl walk. It should be a nice morning. And then we're gonna come back, we're gonna craft. I'll give you a reading update because I have started Divine Rivals and I am a big fan so far. The vibes are strong. So we're gonna read more, caffeinate, and enjoy our morning too. Hi, let's make some bookmarks for my book club together. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video is sponsored by Cricut, a brand I have loved and used for years. I'm thrilled to be partnering with Cricut again, not only for this fun little craft we're about to make together. So I am just such a huge fan of Cricut's products. First and foremost, I feel like they have empowered me so much with their machine and all of their materials to create so many different things over the years, from labels for my kitchen to my own stickers for my journal and notebook. Cricut has made crafting so much less intimidating because their machines and all of their products are just designed to kind of like give spark to whatever it is you're interested in doing. And as I mentioned, I'm gonna be making some bookmarks for my IRL book club. And I'm especially excited because I'm gonna be using my new tool, which is the foil tool I'm gonna use to put initials of all my friends on the bookmarks. I'm gonna make them today. So before we go into making the craft itself, first I wanna show off my design for the bookmark. So this is a shape I imported, and then I also have initials down at the bottom. This is going to be a double-sided bookmark, each side having a different color. I imported this and designed it honestly really quickly in the Cricut Design Studio, which I love. Also, if you're not sure exactly what you want to make, the Cricut Design Studio also has so many projects you can select and customize for yourself too. It's just such a great way to get creative. And of course, I want to make my bookmark, so we're gonna get started. So I've selected my material, and this just lets me know the order that I need to do to make my design. So let's get started. I have my tip loaded into the machine, and I also have my first color and the foil I'm gonna do my embossing on. I'm just gonna load this into the machine, and then it'll work its magic by itself. And now that the embossing's done, I just swap out this. Time to make the other side. Alrighty friends, I have my two pieces that go together. I have my initials on there, and I have glue, some ribbon to add to the top. So we'll make these two, and then obviously I need to make more, but I wanted to show these off. This is what my little double-sided bookmarks are looking like. I really, really love the foil tool. Look how cool that is. Love it. Big shout out again to Cricut for sponsoring this video. Again, if y'all want to learn more about Cricut, I'll have a link to their website down below. They have so many different machines suited to what type of crafting you want to do, as well as so many materials to make your ideas come true, which we love. And I'm personally gonna put my bookmark in my book right now and go finish it. But thank you again for Cricut for sponsoring this video. I just love my Cricut. It's so fun. Hello, I am back home. From going to the coffee shop and hanging out with my friend. In true meeting up with your friend in coffee shop fashion, I didn't do anything productive, and we just chatted for like 2 hours, which was really, really nice. We caught up and hung out, like delightful time, but I did not get too much reading in. Luckily though, I have read 100 pages already of Divine Rivals, and I'm in part 2 of this book, and I am really liking it. It's definitely delivering essentially exactly what I was hoping, which is always so nice when it comes to picking up like anticipated releases. But Divine Rivals is a dual perspective story. It's definitely like a romantic fantasy. Like it's not romantasy. I think that's what they're calling like steamy romance, but it's more like romance and love is like a part of the story. Like this faded romance is like a large part of this book, but it's like lyrical and beautiful. And also the setting is just really interesting. So to take some steps back, our two main characters are Kit and Iris, and they are both journalists at this newspaper, and they're like rivals of each other. They come from very different backgrounds. Kit, this handsome man, is rich. His family has a lot of expectations. He kind of grew up with a silver spoon, these types of things, versus Iris has grown up in a very different household. Her mother struggles with addiction, and her brother has gone off to fight in the war, and they're kind of fighting each other to get this columnist position at the newspaper. The setting that this book is in is really interesting, and I love that it's like a fantasy setting, but our characters have normal jobs, and I think this type of combination is like very cool. It's like contemporary but in a fantasy setting, and it does really kind of have like turn of the century, like World War I vibes, if I was being honest. But the fantasy world is basically a human world, but magic and gods exist. So at one point there was like many gods. There was gods of the sky and gods like below ground, but there was this war between gods, and predominantly most of them have been killed off, but there's like 5 remaining. And 2 of these gods have been at war for a while. And this is why a war exists that involves humans. So depending on like where you live, you're fighting for like one side or another. Our war vibes, but it has kind of like a godly aspect to it, which I think is really interesting. But like mythology and magic are like a part of this story, which moves us into like the other element of this, which is our two main characters begin writing to each other, kind of unbeknownst, at least to one of our characters, but quickly beknownst to the other. Namely, Iris begins writing to her brother, and she kind of like puts the letters unsent like underneath her wardrobe door, but they're then being transported to Kit, her rival at the paper. He begins reading them. They both have a lot of admiration for each other, even though they're rivals, and he begins to see like a different side of her, and so then he becomes emotionally vulnerable in his letters back and forth. Just the writing style of this book is just really fantastic. And I think the emotional vulnerability too is very successful. Sometimes I struggle with a lot of stuff sort of being revealed quickly, but I feel like while this book is definitely paced fast, it's working, and I feel very attached to both characters very quickly. I love how writing is very central to the story and central to both of our main characters' passions, and how they communicate via the written word is like really good too. I think both of them struggle with being vulnerable like in person, so but yet both of them like will bleed their hearts out on a page, especially if they feel like they have like a bit of anonymity to it. But yeah, the setting is cool. It kind of has this like early 1900s vibe, newspaper sort of running the world, but also there is a political aspect of it because depending on what side you are with the gods, the narrative surrounding all of the gods is like very controlled. It's just interesting. It feels like a historical fiction story, but with like a fantastical fantasy setting and twist, and I'm liking it a lot. And Rebecca Ross's writing is just like really delicious and really will pull you in. And I'm reading it quickly. I mean, I read this really fast, and I will definitely read another big chunk today for sure. It's romantic. I feel like it'd be a beautiful movie. But anyway, there is my reading update. Hello friends. Hello Millie. I am gonna do some picking up around the house because there's a bit of a mess, but also we have some friends coming over. We're gonna meet them at a wine bar, and then we're all gonna come back here and watch the third part of the Vanderpump Rules reunion, which we all know is a cultural event. So I'm gonna put some Gracie Abrams on, and we're gonna do some picking up in here and maybe somewhere else. Then I'm gonna do some reading, drink some tea, and then we're gonna be social. I really wanna read more Divine Rivals. I'm really flying through that book. So I'm gonna read a good chunk before we leave to hang out tonight. So let's get to cleaning. Sunshine or sunset mug, so cute. I'm just gonna sit here and do a bit of reading before heading out, now that the house is a little more picked up. Vanderpump Rules Reunion Night 3 was so much fun, but it's now time for me to do some reading. I did get sucked into my phone for a little while there. You know, sometimes when you're like off your phone for hours and hours and hours, and you're like, oh, just check it, and then it's like an hour and a half passes, and you're like, what just happened? I just scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. But now I'm going to read. I did get to page 150 of this today, and I'm gonna read a chunk more. My hope is to finish this book by tomorrow morning. I'm reading it really quickly. The writing style and the setting of this book makes it read really quickly. I also just love how romantic the star-crossed lover element to it. I also like the banter. I can't help but parallel it to, there's this old movie from the 30s that my brother made me watch where it was basically two coworkers that hated each other that worked in like a shop, and they were unknowingly corresponding to each other, and they like fell in love with the person they were corresponding with. And then the man in the book ended up finding out that it was the woman well before the woman did. And so there's this element of dramatic irony. And so their interactions kind of took on even like a different style. And this book is utilizing kind of that same setup, granted very different. And also there's a magical component, but it's reminding me of that movie, which I really enjoyed. And it's utilizing like some similar story dynamics. So there's also that. So it's making me nostalgic for this like old movie that I watched too. But anyway, time to read. Eggo waffles, and I am going to try to finish this book. I have about 150 pages left. This book is 350 pages. It reads so quickly because it has such a huge component of like letter writing, which I love. I love all the correspondence. It just feels romantic. It's just a very romantic idea. So anyway, I'm going to sit down now and read more, and then I will give y'all an update as I begin to progress. Hi friends, excuse how dark and gloomy it is outside, or how dark it is in the shot. It's because it's about to pour, I think, outside. But I wanted to do a reading update because I have 50 pages left of Divine Rivals. I flew through this book. It's like giving Atonement but historical fantasy vibes, and like it's not set really in our world, but it also feels like it's pulling from historical dramas and then adding this fantasy twist in this completely different setting, and it's just very effective and very, very addicting. I also am just very attached to our two main characters, Kit and Iris. Winnow and Robin, if you've read it, you know what I mean. But I just feel like their alternating perspectives just really gives you like a view into each of their worlds, their growing and budding romance, and as I said, the element of the writing back and forth is just so like timelessly romantic, you know what I mean? I also feel like books set with kind of like a historical setting feels so much less cheesy when like classic romantic things are done. Like, I don't know, like if this was set in present day and they were writing letters, I'd be like, just text. But because it's like turn of the century vibes, it just feels completely different. I'll also say the fantasy plotline of the gods and this war is very much becoming center stage. It's not just about their romance. Perhaps the urgency of their love might be made quicker because of the reality of so much danger surrounding both our characters, especially because they become war correspondents, so they're right on the front lines. They're also confronting a lot of the literal reality that has been kept quiet or pushed to the side within the city that they both lived in at the beginning of this book, and politically how the government is trying to, you know, make this war very hush-hush, despite the real reality. And a large part of these characters' desires as writers is to bring that reality to the people living in the city, make them understand like the trauma and the heartbreak so many of these soldiers are facing in trying to keep everyone safe against this like great evil god power. So that's definitely part of this too. I have so little of this left. I'm gonna finish this afternoon after I make lunch and finish up a bit more work. Then I'm for sure going to puzzle and start my second book, which is my historical fiction story, and then also my third book because I'm like, I like to read one book physically and then listen to a book via audio. So I'll probably have 2 new books to talk about, but I'm really enjoying Divine Rivals. I feel like it's balancing a lot of things well. Like it's like giving us enough fantasy to create this interesting setting, but it's not like diving too deep into it, but I feel like it's effective, you know? So anyway, I'm gonna go make lunch now because I am very hungry, and I will check in a bit once I finish taking off my earrings. It's time for my midday change, you know what I mean? I'll probably change back into this to film, but for now, comfortable clothes. Alrighty, lunch today is a summer salad. I have shallots, radish, fresh corn. I made this scallion not cream cheese, sour cream, olive oil, lemon dressing. I have some breadcrumbs I browned, the lettuce, and then I also just cooked up the chicken breast. It's done. In lunch is already. This is really good. I've already had this once this week, and the breadcrumbs, I'm telling you, breadcrumbs are the new croutons. I finished work. I'm immediately in pajamas. We're gonna finish Divine Rivals right now, and then I am setting up a puzzle right away. Hi everyone. I finished Divine Rivals, 350 pages down. 353 pages to be exact. This ended so strongly. Oh my gosh. I wasn't sure if this is gonna be a standalone, but my guess now is it's going to be a duology. The ending got me emotional, hooked, love the characters, love this like God element, and I also feel like the God element is gonna be like bigger in the sequel, if you know what I mean. I was sorry, I noticed there's a bee outside. I was such a fan of this, really, really liked it. First book down for the vlog, which I'm thrilled about. Now, I'm gonna start this puzzle. We're gonna set up over there and lay this out, and we're gonna do some puzzling tonight, play some Tears of the Kingdom tonight, and also start my other book, which is The Doors of Death, The Death Door, something like that tonight as well. So let's get our evening started, shall we? Quick dinner has been made. Hi friends, I am in bed and I'm about to start my next book of this vlog. Well, actually the third book of this vlog. I need to talk about my audiobook, which I'll update you guys about tomorrow. But I literally just played so much Tears of the Kingdom and watched so much reality TV this evening. I've been doing that all week and it has revived my soul in a way that I can't even describe. I love hanging out at my house. There's nothing better. That being said, I'm so excited to pick up Age of Death by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the 5th book to the Legends of the First Empire series. One of my favorite fantasy series, and just with every book, it just further entrenches itself like in my heart and in my like top list of fantasy books. The 4th book had quite the cliffhanger, so I'm just really looking forward to see how this 5th book is going to unravel. I've talked about this series a lot on my channel, but it's very pastoral, multi-POV tale set in kind of an ancient fantasy setting. It's a classic setup of like humans versus elves. And throughout the entire series, we watch like the advancement of like human civilization in this fantasy world. So there's like war and conflict and the development of political systems and inventions, and Michael J. Sullivan really paces the beats of the plot well. It's also structurally divided between 2 trilogies. So the 3rd book was kind of like a huge arc, and then we found ourselves in a bit of a time skip in the 4th book. And here we are in the 5th book, and we're gonna like ramp back up again. I love the plot progressions. I love the characters so much, and I also just love how Michael J. Sullivan like approaches really classic fantasy plot elements, like fantastic writing for war scenes, so many different types of quests with such a fascinating makeup of characters. I feel like Michael J. Sullivan, there's a large cast of characters, and there's characters who become POV characters or like center stage of a book that you just would have never guessed. They're just in the background, and it just creates such a dynamic lineup and experience, and I just feel like it provides such variety, and also just, I don't know. There's just a lot to like about this series. The settings, the writing style, the plot lines, the characters, like everything is so good. So I'm really looking forward to picking up this book, and then I'm trying to wrap up the series this summer and start another series by Michael J. Sullivan, so I'm just trying to keep focused. This book, I want to say is, yeah, it's just about 400 pages, so not too crazy long for a fantasy book. I'm pretty sure I'll fly through it regardless, but I'm going to start it tonight, read a chunk tomorrow, and also listen more of my audiobook tomorrow, and then, you know, we'll keep the ball rolling. Good morning, everyone. I read 50 pages last night, which I think is not bad. Oh, this is kind of an awkward angle. Trying to carry my book and my cup of coffee, because I'm gonna go sit down now and read in the front room for a little bit. Millie is being so cute, per usual. The first 50 pages of this book were absolutely explosive. To say it just basically started where it left off is an understatement. I was almost like, wait, what? It was a little disorienting, but fantastic in terms of just pure entertainment. Love this series. So we're gonna read right now. I'm gonna set you up over here. We're gonna have a little bit of a morning reading session, shall we?
Oh, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're everything you need, yeah.
Hello, I am dressed for the day, and I'm also happy to report I read 100 pages of Age of Death by Michael J. Sullivan this morning. I am obsessed with this book. I feel like I'm gonna read this book so quickly. This series just gets better and better with each installment, or I get more and more attached with each installment. I also am just obsessed with the setting of this particular book. As you guess from the title, death is very central, and the quests always bring us to very interesting places within this series, and I just appreciate how so much of Michael J. Sullivan's writing feels familiar but so fresh at the same time. It's fantastic. Also with 100 pages read, I have read almost 500 pages so far for this vlog, which I am rather happy with. I'm gonna try to read more of this today, but I think I'm actually going to pivot to the dance tree while I do my puzzling. I listened to 20 pages of this last night, and I'm liking it so far. If you're not familiar, if I haven't already mentioned, The Dance Tree is a historical fiction story set in 1518 in Strasbourg. The setup of the book is inspired by a real historical event, which basically in this town, a woman starts dancing in the square and does not stop, creating a frenzy where people like join in, and also just causes general chaos. People think it might have to do with witchcraft, but in starting this book, it basically opens, like there's 2 pages and the woman starts dancing. But we're introduced to our main character, Lisbeth, who is very, very pregnant, and she lives in a farm outside of Strasbourg with her husband and his family. She has struggled with giving birth over the course of their entire marriage, and now she's very pregnant once again, and obviously there's a lot of fear and concern surrounding her pregnancy. Karen Millwood Hargrave's writing is one that I really enjoy. Immediately, just from the 20 pages I've read, her style is consistent. It's very austere, and there's like a lot said in what's not said, if that makes sense, and like interactions. And she also makes really interesting like female connections, friendship, more than friendship. There's just a lot of dynamic female situations going on that are heavily influenced by the historical setting. Some of them are like uncomfortable to read, some of them are fascinating to read, and I'm feeling I'm gonna really like this book. Again, I've only read 20 pages, but I've read The Mercies by this author, and very different setting, but the style is consistent. Like, I don't know. She's really good at creating a setting and like an environment that our characters are existing in. The previous book I read of hers was like freezing cold, a really small town, and this is almost like an oppressive heat, like the summer stickiness, like you can't escape from, and you can never quite feel like there's enough space, or you're making yourself take up enough space. That's kind of how I feel while reading this book, but I'm liking it so far. The audiobook is also really good. I really like the narrator, so it's definitely captured my attention. This is definitely going to be like a darker read. I get the sense from that right away, and one that'll make me contemplate lots of things, you know. Being a woman during a witch craze moment in a town is not going to be a great setup for you, which is not shocking to hear. But I am actually gonna sit down now and do some more puzzling and listen to my audiobook for a bit longer. I didn't get too far with my puzzle, but I did get into my audiobook, so might as well keep that ball rolling, shall we? Hi, it's a few days later, and not to be chaotic, but I'm really not into this puzzle. I think it's a beautiful puzzle, but I think just the colors and the tones of the pieces just like aren't calling out to me, and I just cannot motivate myself to do it, so we're gonna switch it out. I have listened to more of The Dance Tree, and I listened to my audiobook a lot when I was cleaning, so I am gonna do a bit of a reading update, and then we're gonna pick a new puzzle out together. And then we also need to talk about The Door of Death, because I read the whole thing in one day, so I need to give you an update there. Let's do a reading update amongst this puzzle. So, confirming The Dance Tree is still excellent. I'm about 50 pages into this book now via the audio. I love the narrator, and I also just feel like there's something about like a British person reading me a historical fiction book that lands very successfully. Like, I don't know why. Does anyone else like prefer their historical fiction to be read by a British person? That's not a universal, you know, case thing, but sometimes I do feel like it adds a nice flourish, and I feel like it's working for The Dance Tree, even though it's set in France, but you know, we're rolling with it. I just love this author's writing and her characterization. It always just feels like to me that she's like pulling me through the story. She's not crazy straightforward, and a lot of the emotions and the intensity of the book are like there, like you almost feel uncomfortable. There's this simmering tension that exists, and particularly our main character, given that she's a woman living in her husband's family home, she's not really empowered to be able to speak freely or speak comfortably. And you kind of get this like the anxiety I have reading her experience living in a home where she clearly is not treated as equal, or like as she's not allowed to exist as comfortably as everyone else, is like, ooh, it just makes me so uncomfortable. On top of that too, it's definitely bringing forth the expectation of a woman, especially in this time period, but you know, this persists even to this day. Like, so much of a woman's worth is boiled down to her ability to conceive children, and because our main character has had such difficulty conceiving, it's impacted her marriage, it's impacted how she's treated within the household. She's treated less than, like, people are like, I don't know what to do with you, you're not fulfilling your contract, but we're still housing and feeding you and doing all of these things. And like, that tension, all of these things are unsaid, but the assumption is there. And granted, some people don't treat each other very nicely, but it's not like people are going out of their way to say these things, but the implication's there. It's just creating quite the situation, quite the backdrop for this book to take place. And then obviously there's the woman dancing in the square. But it's interesting how those two storylines, I think, are going to kind of like parallel each other. Kind of this feeling of like, a lot of women to survive have to look calm above the water, but their feet underneath are absolutely like pedaling in a frenzy, but they can't show that anxiety or that discomfort, especially in places that are not safe for them to do so. And that's generally society, especially in the 1600s. Anyway, I'm just really liking what Karen Millwood Hargrave is making in this book. I'm not shocked that I'm liking it so much, just because her writing is so good. But let's go pick out a new puzzle, because I'm not letting this puzzling thing go. I want to get back into puzzling. It's been a couple months and I need to just find the perfect one, and I own so many, so we're gonna pick one out together. Ignore my giant beanbag. This is where it lives. We love the beanbag, so we just allow it to block this closet. New space unlocked. So I have a lot of puzzles, as you can see, and there's one in particular I feel that is calling out to me, and it's right up here. It's the World of Jane Austen. I like this, obviously, one, because I love Jane Austen, but it has a lot of little buildings, and I really love when puzzles have like lots of little details for me to do versus like one big thing. I like when there's like lots of stuff. So I'm thinking this might work out a bit better for me. So I'm going to start this one now, but more likely will be included in my next vlog, but I thought we could pick it out together. The worst part of puzzling is picking up all the pieces. So that's what we're doing now. Hi, so in my lack of vlogging yesterday, I'm realizing I should probably just like wrap this vlog up, because I have read so much. So first and foremost, I also finished the entirety of Age of Death. That's what I did yesterday besides vlogging. I just read this entire book. Here's the deal, 5th book in a fantasy series, not the easiest thing to talk about, but what I can talk about is how Michael J. Sullivan's writing sequences are just so good. I'm so pulled in. I love just everything he's doing to finish out this series. Something I'm liking too is I feel like the plot progression of the last 3 books almost feel like different parts of the same story, which I feel like really builds this epicness to it, while each book isn't really that long. Like, this could almost be like one giant book just separated into parts, and I kind of love how it's written like that. Like, there's these huge cliffhangers, and it just doesn't feel like, oh, because this is a standalone book, it needs to like perfectly round itself out and then we like go into another book. I can definitely see why this 6-book series is kind of talked about as 2 separate trilogies. Like, the first part and the second part of the series are almost like direct sequels in a series, with each book within those movements as like parts or acts within that individual movement. And I feel like I'm doing a bad job describing it, but if you read it, I feel like you'll understand it. It just works so well. Like, he's just focused on like giving us this arc and this part of the story all just flows together in just such an effective way, and I am loving it so much. And it makes them addicting because you read each book and you're like, I need to know what's gonna happen next, because you're not given that like satisfaction of having a plot progression end, or like a part of a plot progression end. Basically what I'm trying to say is I just don't feel like he's wasting any time plot wise trying to give us like a wrap up just because the book itself is ending. It's more like, and the story continues in the next book. Like, we are left hanging, and I just can't wait to see how the entire thing is going to wrap up. And I just feel like the flow of the books are perfect. I almost feel like I never forget what's going on because I'm almost left like right in the action based off of the previous installment, and therefore everything is building on itself so nicely. Just from a plot pacing point of view and a plot writing point of view, I find it so satisfying. Like, not to mention that he's constantly giving us new characters and new places to just be fascinated by, and character arcs that you're going to love, and just like incredible development throughout this entire series. It's just addicting on all fronts, and I'm loving it. So yes, I read the entirety of this book. It's just under 400 pages. I also read 50 pages of The Dance Tree, and I read the entirety of Divine Rivals, which is like 350 pages. So I read so much. I read like 800 pages over the past few days, and it was honestly fantastic. All of these books I enjoyed immensely. Well, I'm still continuing to enjoy The Dance Tree, but you know, I thought it only made sense to wrap this vlog up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, big shout out to this video sponsor, which is Cricut. I'll have a link down below to their website, as well as a lot of the products I showed off in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye.